Welcome to the Omnichannel Imperative presented by Mediaocean. Very happy you could join us today. I'm Brian Marcy. I am, until October, I was the president and editor-in-chief at Digiday. Since left the company, and I am now doing what a lot of journalists are doing. I'm writing a Substack. I'm in the newsletter game. It's called The Rebooting, and it is about striving for a sustainable media and marketing ecosystem. I mean, this was basically the basis of what we were doing at Digiday, and it is a really important thing to get accomplished. So if you can check it out, it'd be great. It is therebooting.substack.com. So we have a really good day ahead of us of programming, and you know, omnichannel is something over the last 20 years. I think I've heard about it like constantly, and you know, it's never been more important than ever. People, we all know it. Our days are spread across so many different devices, and we're consuming so much media. It's really difficult for marketers to have a coherent message that reaches people wherever they are and whatever they're doing. So we're going to talk about what that means and what the challenges are to making this a reality. So first, let me go through what is going to take place over the next couple hours. First, after this introduction, we will be hearing the points of view of top agency and brand leaders for how they think of omnichannel and the challenges that they're facing and actually making it a reality. Following that, we have a feature presentation by Joanna O'Connell of Forrester Research, and then we're going to have a Q&A with Cadillac CMO Melissa Grady. And that leads up to a special announcement that Mediaocean is going to be making with their new product paradigm. And then finally, we have a fireside chat that is going to be done by Mediaocean CEO Bill Wise, and Bill's going to be talking with Robert Smith and Ed Norton. So that's going to be some star power there. And finally, we're going to have some closing thoughts. I'm going to come back with packaging it all up with the 5 things we've learned. So please do stick around for that. And we do want you to be part of this. This is a little bit of a hybrid. You know, this is not actually live. We've recorded most of these sessions ahead of time, but at the same time, we're all going to be watching it together. And so please do share your thoughts and do it by using a hashtag. The hashtag is Omnichannel Imperative. That's hashtag Omnichannel Imperative. Use it on Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, whatever, doesn't matter. So before we get started, I want to go over some of the feedback that we got ahead of time. So we asked for your thoughts about omnichannel, and we put it into a word cloud. And I think this should set the tone for what exactly we're talking about, because a lot of these things are, I don't want to say synonyms, but they're very similar in that when we're talking about omnichannel, we're talking about being ubiquitous and multi-platform, because you have to be everywhere that people are, and they've never been more places. That's why we heard a lot about cross-media and frictionless and seamless delivery. And then also, you know, these messages, they have to be not just like the everyday message that you stamp out. That's why we heard about enhanced brand experiences, one-stop shop. And then finally, you got to figure out if this stuff works, right? And that's why you know, people talked about unified measurement and being able to connect sales and marketing, because you got to make sure this stuff works. So thank you for participating in that, and we are going to move on with the programming. And so to start things off, we're going to be playing what we heard from agency and brand leaders when it comes to omnichannel.
I think the skill set of marketers has changed dramatically over the last 7 years. You're seeing now that engagement on knowing how we use these analytics and data and the personalization and where we need to go. Our customers are certainly rapidly changing. And I think what we've experienced since the beginning of this year has shown remarkable advancement in terms of what consumers expect and where they are. And ultimately, we're at this point where we really need to now bring all those elements together at another level, really learn how to use it productively.
Broadly, we're about to enter the third phase. The first phase of organization was we organized by media. So you basically had television, radio, print. The buying was organized by media, and the planning was tended to be organized, in a way that sort of crossed media, but the buying was media. The second is when you basically try to integrate where the planning and the buying, where while you might have different buying specialists, eventually everybody reported to one chief, buying officer, whether it was digital, analog, etc. And so that one became the second one. So the planning was increasingly centralized and the buying was increasingly centralized. Now we're moving to the third one, where the measurement and financing of this will also be centralized. And when that happens, you're going to basically have this unique combination of one team working with different specialists, but all basically with a united consumer in perspective, a united planning in perspective, and a united measurement in perspective. And increasingly, we are basically getting there because more and more people are thinking much more broadly than they were thinking before. And by the way, it's much easier when digital becomes dominant to get to that model than when analog was dominant.
It's no secret in market that a lot of really every walled garden that exists, the reason that they're able to be a walled garden is because of unique data that they have on their consumer base, and they're able to use that data to help plan advertising, measure advertising, et cetera. And so for us as media buyers, there's, huge advantage if we're able to tie together these audience bases across walled gardens to be able to really not only benchmark performance within a walled garden buy, but of course be able to do that across the ecosystem.
For me, it's a really simple equation. It's really all about planning that reflects how consumers actually consume media and move about the world today. So I think the linchpin really for omnichannel anything is really to start with the audience and with the consumer versus starting with the channels. Now, of course, that's an easy thing to say, a difficult thing to do, just given the sheer volume of channels and fragmentation across the media landscape today. But I think, we, at least at OMD and at Omnicom, have made tremendous strides forward in enabling more of a true omnichannel approach for the brands that we support.
This is a really interesting conversation, and it's one that I love having because it kind of sets up an ideal that, if there was utopia of what I would like, and I think what a lot of marketers would want to be able to do, and that's to be able to have like cross-channel attribution and reach and frequency controls. And due to that not being available, it really opens up a lot of creative and innovative ways for me and my team to plan our paid social campaigns. One thing that's really interesting and a constant source of conversation internally as well as with our clients is how do we make sure that we're driving efficient reach and that we're not wasting our media pounds, euros, dollars across reaching multiple people.
In terms of tools, what we've been seeing is really a reflection of the marketing organizational setup. That is, there are TV buyers and there are tools for TV buyers. There are paid social buyers, and there's all sorts of analytical tools inside the walled gardens and some outside specifically for paid social buyers. There are folks who buy from Google, and there are amazing tools there. So it is highly fragmented today. And if, as we discussed, what the company tries to do is create a singular message and have that message be delivered across a multitude of channels, what's really required is a set of analytical tools that helps you see across all channels and helps you connect the identity and helps you see how a specific variant of the message is performing across every touch point with a customer.
We've been working really closely on some of our clients that really have an appetite to kind of test out this, new area and kind of get some learnings under their belt. We've been doing a lot with buying different modalities, right? So for example, when you're thinking about OTT and the hockey stick consumption that COVID brought on, what are the different ways you can buy? Programmatically, direct? Is there innovative ways you can think about supply path and get ahead of your competition? So there's a lot of work that we've been doing there with clients who are really trying to advance themselves in that space and find, new ways to access inventory and audiences in leveraging pricing as part of what they're already doing with those large partners.
If we take it at the most basic form, it is matching where consumers spend their time on screens. And if you look at it, it is in advanced TV. It is in some of those tech behemoths like Facebook, Google, Amazon. It is in some of the ancillary digital platforms like Twitter and Pinterest. But at this point, 83% of the time that people spend with media is in what is traditionally called closed ecosystems, especially when you define TV, and Bill has done this for a long time, TV as the oldest and most notable closed ecosystem. And so if we start to recognize how time is spent, and you realize that it takes data science, it takes math, to connect across these closed ecosystems in a privacy compliant way, that it takes real technology to truly forge ahead in the emerging converging TV space, then omnichannel really is nothing more than a representation of how consumers spend their time, and technology needs to mirror that and enable marketers, as I said before, and you'll hear it from me time and time again, enables marketers to market the way consumers consume, all touch points, all moments, all screens.
Okay, we're back. That was a great primer as far as what top agency and brand leaders are thinking when it comes to omnichannel advertising. I want to thank Beat TV for putting that together. Andy always does a great job, and yet again, he did a great job. So we're going to move on to our next session, and to kick things off, we are going to bring on Joanna O'Connell from Forrester Research. As Vice President, Principal Analyst, leading ad tech coverage, Joanna explores the fast evolving digital advertising ecosystem with a focus on helping marketers make the right organizational and technological decisions to power customer-obsessed marketing. Joanna has nearly 20 years of digital marketing experience and has been a pioneer throughout her career. I know I have personally regularly bugged Joanna over the last 20 years to try to explain something in ad tech that I had no idea what I was talking about. She began her career at Avenue A. All the old timers remember Avenue A. I remember Avenue A as a media planner and buyer back in 2000. And in 2008, she launched Razorfish's agency trading desk, Adams Systems. That should be part of like a trivia question that we have at the end. In order to bring programmatic expertise to the agency and its clients, I mean, 2008 with programmatic was really, really early. So Joanna has truly been there from the beginning. She first joined Forrester in 2010, and in 2013, she actually moved to Ad Exchanger and was leading their research practice there. And then finally in 2015, she went over to MediaMath as their CMO before coming back to Forrester, a boomerang, in 2017, and she spends her time advising B2C marketing professionals. So for this presentation, Joanna is going to tell us how you can get ready for the future of omnichannel advertising. Joanna?
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me. Happy to be here. Joanna O'Connell, VP Principal Analyst at Forrester Research, and I'm here to talk a bit about this sort of stew of forces that are going on right now that are really helping to shape, I think, the go forward future of omnichannel advertising. So I want to start with this to get everybody's attention. I think it's, it's sort of accepted conventional wisdom that people hate advertising. And this has probably showed up in some creative agencies, whiteboarding session. But I think we all think it, and I understand why we all think it. It's conventional wisdom for a reason. But the reality is that advertising does in fact have value, and it has value not just for brands. Of course, advertisers use advertising to generate awareness, intent, sales, and loyalty. We know this, right? We all either work for brands or have been at brands in this advertising environment. But publishers, of course, are a big part of this contract as well. Publishers use ad revenue to fund content creation and also to help subsidize free or low-cost access to that content. So the advertising contract absolutely also includes publishers and value for publishers. But thirdly, the advertising contract includes value for consumers. And consumers, although again, we all love to hate on advertising, can use it to get access to the content we were talking about, but also to learn, laugh, and buy. And again, if we're honest with ourselves, we all know that we've had bad advertising experiences, and we've also had really great advertising experiences. So I'm going to just, for a second, maybe level set when we're talking about this idea of omnichannel, because it's going to come up a bunch, what it is that we're talking about. And really, to me, it's sort of an aperture question. So there is omnichannel in the context, the largest context, where you're really talking about any possible touch point and really all of the parts in between when you're thinking about an ecosystem that a brand is developing. And when I say brand, I mean an organization is developing. So this is not just about marketing per se. Within that aperture is the aperture of omnichannel marketing, where you're talking about paid stuff, sure, but you're also talking about owned environments and earned media and the like. So it's that aperture. You go one level below that to the aperture of advertising, which is to say paid media, and that's really what we're talking about today, the aperture of omnichannel advertising, that is paid media. And that is where our little star lives. Okay, so, why do we even care about this idea of omnichannel advertising? Well, if you think about the traditional model, and this is the model I grew up in, certainly, and I'm sure a lot of you did too, we bought channels very individually in a siloed way, and we did it very manually, where you're sending off the insertion order through email and you're building things in spreadsheets. And that is not to say that there isn't a lot of that stuff that still happens today, but that does not mean that that's the optimum way to do things. So, if you think about the operational inefficiency that's baked into that kind of approach, it's very real, it's very material. You also have some limitations from a performance standpoint because things are operating really individually, and that means that your sort of understanding of what's happening and your ability to make changes is quite individualized, for example, by channel. But I think importantly, and a thing that we had not traditionally talked all that much about, is that the experience for a consumer may not be all that great either when it feels as though it is very disconnected, or it is either way too light, like I saw your ad once and never again, so who the heck are you? Or way too heavy, like I'm seeing your ads 100 times a day across every particular medium that I happen to interact with. Those are not good experiences for consumers. So this idea of the traditional approach of advertising being multi-channel and manual, frankly, we believe is suboptimal. So when we talk about this idea of omnichannel, then what do we mean philosophically? So we're really talking about an approach that is much more connected, right? So sequenced across channels, connected, relevant, consistent with the customer stage in their life cycle. In other words, really much more customer-centric rather than, say, channel-centric. Much more coordinated, which is to say purposefully designed rather than simply just running a bunch of stuff all at the same time. and much more complete, which is to say being in the places that consumers are, kind of where they need you and when they need you. So that kind of fundamentally is what we mean when we're talking about this idea of omnichannel. Okay, so is it really better? This is a question I've been asking myself for a long time because I'm a big believer in the idea of this. And so we actually sort of set out to test the hypothesis that a more omnichannel approach to advertising was in fact better. And by using Forrester's Total Economic Impact, or TEI, model, I worked with some of the TEI folks inside of Forrester, and this is for syndicated research. I did this just for our research at Forrester. We actually interviewed some customers that had moved to a more kind of streamlined, consolidated, centralized omnichannel approach, and more technology driven. And we interviewed them and crunched a bunch of numbers and basically proved, yes, in fact, moving from a traditional manual multi-channel siloed approach to a more omni-channel approach is in fact an ROI positive exercise, which is to say it is worth the effort to make this kind of your new paradigm. And again, this is just sort of classic Forrester syndicated research. It's in our omni-channel advertising playbook. So we proved it, which was very exciting for me. And of course, that sounds amazing, right? Like, of course, that's what we all want. We want to deliver great experiences to consumers. We want to be operationally efficient. We want to have great performance. We want to live the omni-channel dream, of course. But we're at a weird time in advertising right now, especially in digital advertising. So I'm just gonna, who's had this experience? I'm gonna pause and share this cartoon with you. And maybe you've seen this cartoon before. I can't help it. I think it's just the best, most perfect encapsulation of all of the things that have kind of gone wrong in the digital advertising ecosystem over the last 25 years, certainly the last 10 years or so, where you have, you know, somebody's holiday being ruined by a retargeting campaign that was aggressive and intrusive and also badly executed. So everything about this is bad. And the reality is we all know that these are the kinds of things that do in fact happen. This is not an uncommon experience for consumers to have, including us, the human beings that are in the ad tech and advertising industry, but also are consumers ourselves. So what we would argue is that the balance, we talked about that kind of contract, that relationship among advertisers, publishers, and consumers, the balance of the needs and value creation among those three constituencies has been lost. And the group that seems to be the sort of most obviously unhappy with how advertising is working right now, and very rightly so, is consumers themselves. The balance has been lost in what we call the age of the customer. And the age of the customer is this time we find ourselves in, kind of a 20-year business cycle that started around 2010, where the kinds of companies that really focused obsessively on understanding and delivering on the needs of their customers, just as customers themselves were getting more demanding, were going to be the kinds of companies that were going to win. And we've got all kinds of good research about that, and we've proved that that is in fact true. But the customer obsession notion was not being paid off in advertising, and who was kind of suffering? Consumers themselves, who were essentially saying, no, I don't like this. This is not working for me. So I wonder if anyone actually gets this reference, if you're old enough and nerdy enough to get this reference. But this was one of my favorite movies when I was 10. And I think it perfectly encapsulates this weird time where we find ourselves, which is the balance being lost has set up this really kind of dramatic, complicated convergence of big forces that are reshaping the world of advertising, really not just today, but like on a go forward basis. Okay, so when we talk about this idea of data deprecation, what we mean is that the future is going to be one where data itself, consumer data itself, is far less readily available. It's more sparse, it's more heavily controlled, it's more concentrated. and therefore it looks quite different than it has worked in and looked in the last 25 years of digital advertising. So, what are these big forces that are creating all this tumult that I'm talking about? Well, the first is consumers taking privacy protecting actions themselves. We know that the majority of US online adults will tell us that they use at least one kind of privacy or security protecting tool. That comes from our technographics data. And then if you ask those folks that use some range of tools, around almost 4 in 10 will say, one of the reasons that they do it is to avoid advertisers getting access to their data. So they are telling us through their behavior that they are not comfortable necessarily with how things are working. Privacy regulations, of course, we've had the GDPR for a while in Europe. Here in the United States, California CCPA and now CPRA, which upped the ante a bit, and lots of other states with sort of similar kinds of initiatives underway that essentially are designed to better inform and protect the consumer and give the consumer significantly more of a voice in the kind of data contract. The third one, which is the one everybody likes to talk about, is the deprecation of the third-party cookie. And of course, that is a very big deal. It's been happening for a while. But when Chrome made the announcement, Google's Chrome made the announcement in January 2020, when everyone threw their hands in the air because Chrome is such a significant player in the browser space, and also Google. But it's not just that, right? You have device manufacturers and OS owners also sort of stepping in and saying, you can't just use data however you want or gather data however you want. So things like mobile ad ID restrictions and the like. And then the fourth, sorry, back to my Clash of the Titans reference. The fourth is that you have these, massive walled gardens, obviously Google, Facebook, and Amazon, but others probably likely to follow who are saying, hey, we have the thing that you want. We have consumers, we know them, we have direct relationships with them, we have lots of data about them and their behaviors, and in some cases their transactions. We have places where we can serve them ads, and we have a means to serve them ads. So if you want to work with us, you got to come to us. And that phenomenon, as I said, is likely to get kind of more pronounced, not less, as more large companies who have those assets recognize that they're in more of a power position than they maybe were pre-data deprecation. So all these forces in a stew, creating a lot of change. So when we think about what this ultimately means, I think it's fair to say that the first 25 years of digital advertising have been relatively wild west. I mean, we've seen, tons and tons of really interesting innovation, tons and proliferation, tons and tons of tools and categories, tons of experimentation. And on one level, theoretically, that's a very good thing, and a lot of good has come out of that. But on another, that also means that bad behaviors have been allowed to flourish. We haven't had a really good handle on how to kind of manage all of the complexity, and unintentional consequences have been a byproduct of this sort of unfettered experimentation and innovation and some shady stuff, quite frankly. So if that was the first 25 years, we're moving now into a model that's going to be significantly more curated, controlled, and managed. And what that ultimately ends up looking like is one where first-party data and second-party data, which are far less scaled than the kind of classic behavioral stuff that's been swirling around, do start to supplant that third-party data ecosystem. Secondarily, the cookie definitely going to die, but what is going to replace it is a hot topic of much debate. The reality is it's not going to be a single thing that replaces it. We're going to have a future that actually is more of a hodgepodge of approaches. And so, for example, the conversation around identity, which, by the way, is not even a singular concept, but kind of a multifaceted concept, is part of the answer here and part of the equation, but not the only one. We are going to have a real spectrum of addressability, ranging from, you know, really addressable, like to the person level, to completely non-existent, no addressability at all. So we don't have a singular future, we have a multifaceted future. And finally, we have to recognize that walls are going to go up, and advertisers are going to have to contend with how they want to and are willing to interact with the world, in a world with more walls, at minimum with kind of gates around them. So, you know, what to do with all of these forces that are at play, and what to do given some of the new market realities that are presenting themselves. First of all, just remember that all is not lost here. You know, when you ask US online adults, do you think that ads are a good way to learn about new products, for example, 40% will actually agree, only 20% will disagree with that. There's 40% that are neutral, they're on the fence. We have to convince them, and we have to convince them through good and thoughtful behavior. Good and thoughtful behavior follows good and thoughtful strategy. So when I say good and thoughtful strategy, what I don't mean is just go figure out what the next, you know, cookie replacement is going to be and put, you know, hang your hat on that, because that is not a long-term sustainable solution here. Absolutely not. Instead, it's a bit of a rethink that we need organizations to go through. We really need to treat transparency and choice for consumers as our new default setting. And when we don't have an opportunity to get those things directly, our default setting should be less. We should not have an assumption that we are allowed to get into the lives of every consumer. We also need to focus on value, and it sounds so darn obvious, but I don't think we've necessarily done a very good job of that. Value needs to be defined by what the consumer finds valuable, not necessarily by what we think is right in that moment. And that is going to take some experimentation and trial and error, but it means really committing to trying to understand, if I'm asking something of you, like sharing data with me, why should you? What are you getting in return that is going to be valuable enough to you that you're going to want to take that action with me as a brand? And then the third one is this idea of developing appropriate relationships across the stages of the customer life cycle, which is to say, let's stop defaulting to a place of just because I can, I definitely will, when it comes to things like audience targeting and ad personalization, and appreciate that if you don't have a relationship with someone, such as in a prospecting situation, it may be perfectly acceptable to think about using kind of more traditional style tactics like contextual targeting or other non-audience-based signals, or segmentation style approaches with far less personalization in the advertising, because that's appropriate given the kind of lack of connection that you actually have with that consumer. But as you get to know that consumer better and you develop that relationship, you have an opportunity to find out how tailored does this consumer want his or her advertising to be, how much does this consumer want to kind of get closer to me as a brand, and if it's important to me that they do want that, how do I create value creating experiences that are going to incentivize them to want to get closer to me? Because too much too soon is a thing. You know, nobody wants to be stalked around the internet, but too little too late is also a thing. You know, I'm a new Simply Safe customer. I signed up, I gave them my email address. I have an app, they obviously know who I am, and yet I'm still getting ads that say, hey, sign up for Simply Safe. I'm just like, guys, I mean, you know, you're a technology company. Like, how do you not know that I'm already a customer? Why don't you give me something that's useful to me as an existing customer? So listen, mastering omnichannel is not a simple thing. And as I said, this is what we are here to talk about today, omnichannel advertising. It takes a real commitment, and it takes a commitment across many, many dimensions. I'm naming them here. These are from our omnichannel advertising playbook, which is also where that TEI model was. But it's everything from kind of people, how you hire people and train people to think and operate this way, to kind of processes that are designed to better connect channels and experiences together, there to how you construct the components of your advertising technology stack, to how you think about oversight kind of within and across everything, things like brand safety and suitability, to how you measure bottoms up and top down. But again, all of that to follow good, thoughtful strategy where you're putting consumers and kind of their needs and wants and an appreciation for and respect for their choice kind of front and center. Because even in a data deprecated world, the fundamentals of developing a more omni-channel approach remain true. And we did a bunch of research on this. My colleague Jim Nail and I did a kind of a roadmap report that looked at these kind of stages of maturity when it comes to omni-channel advertising. And again, even if we're not talking about perfect one-to-one addressability, that should not make us throw up our hands and say, well, forget it, I'm not going to try. It's really, again, about a reframing. So when you are early in your omni-channel journey, it's still appropriate to think, how do I create more connected experiences, even across just a couple of channels that don't necessarily have to be perfectly one-to-one, but at minimum feel as though they are referential to one another. What is the impact of my display advertising on my search advertising, for example? What happens when I run a huge television campaign? Does that actually drive conversions in another channel? When you get to the place where you're really running from an omni-channel advertising standpoint, that is when you have this kind of seamless, fast-moving, iterative, nimble kind of approach. And also, I think where you're really pushing industry norms. You're leading the conversation about what the future of advertising should look like. You're testing into alpha and beta opportunities rather than simply saying, I'm going to wait for somebody else to figure it out. Because right now we are building the plane while we are flying it. But what's so important here is that we don't treat this as an opportunity simply to do a find replace on traditional strategies or tactics or technologies, but as a way to build, maybe a rocket ship rather than just building yet another plane. So what are you going to do in the meantime, to get prepared for the data deprecation stuff that's on the horizon? Think about your exposure to things like first, second, and third party data when it comes to your audience segmentation. Think about how your media is being targeted against individual audiences, for example, or individual users. Think about how your programmatic media is working. Are you primarily in open RTB? Are you buying in private marketplaces, programmatic guaranteed, and the like? Take a look at your ad personalization. Do you just have a default setting called DCO retargeting? And is that going to work going forward? And think about your measurement. Bottoms up multi-touch attribution using third-party cookies is in trouble. There are alternative solutions, but it's hard to know with any of these things what you should try if you don't know what your current state looks like. So finally, you have an opportunity here, as I said, to really do a rethink. So what does it mean to rewrite your data strategy with a consumer first lens? Hopefully at this point, I've given you a sense of some of the things that you need to be thinking about to do that effectively and thoughtfully so that you're doing it in a way that is sustainable. But appreciate that, you also need to be asking lots of hard questions, not just of kind of how things are working internally inside your organization and, what you're buying and how you're personalizing, but having conversations with the folks in your technology stack to see how they are thinking about data deprecation and whether or not you think that those answers really pass a sniff test when it comes to sort of privacy and sustainable approaches to ethical use of consumer data. I think you should do the same thing with your service providers. Talk to your agency or agencies and do it now. I think some of them are going to have really thoughtful answers that are approaching the philosophical here, and some are just going to say, "Oh, don't worry, we're just going to, identity is the solution." It's just not a thoughtful answer. And you have a real opportunity right now to start testing and benchmarking, and I would love to see folks be doing that more. Like, what is your roadmap for trying alternative methods of targeting, for example, contextual, and that's just one example. Can you start targeting against a sort of more segment or cohort style? Again, how much are you doing on a one-to-one basis? Is it really necessary? What happens if you stop doing that? What happens to performance? Those kinds of things are the questions you should be asking yourself now. Okay, whew. I know that's a lot of territory to cover and not a lot of time, but I hope I have given you, some really useful food for thought here, that we are at a really important and pivotal moment in the future of omnichannel advertising, and that taking a more omnichannel approach does not have to mean this ongoing obsession with perfect one-to-one. It really is about having a mindset around delivering experiences for consumers that are ultimately value creating for those consumers, so that this notion of people hating advertising, this conventional wisdom, can truly prove itself just to be that, conventional wisdom. So with that, thank you so much. I really appreciate everybody's attention. And again, thank you to Mediaocean for having me.
Thanks a lot, Joanna, for that great presentation. I thought that was a really good framework for how to think about the journey that all marketers are on. At Digiday, we used to always talk about what we did was everyone was at point A and they needed to get to point B. And I think omnichannel is pretty much the same thing. And so in order to find that out, we asked all of you a question about where you are in your omnichannel journey along the lines of what Joanna was just talking about. And the results were encouraging, actually, I think, because you need to have self-awareness before you have growth. And the fact that nearly half of you said you were merely at the crawl stage of omnichannel definitely speaks to a level of self-awareness. About as many people said that they were either at the run or the walk phase, but with 77% being either crawling or walking, there's obviously a lot of work to be done, and that's okay. So thank you for answering all of that. And now we're going to move on to a conversation that we're going to have with Lance Newhouser from Mediaocean and Melissa Grady, the CMO of Cadillac. And it's going to be great to hear from a large marketer about how they're thinking about their omni-channel journey. A little bit about Melissa. She has been at Cadillac for nearly 3 years and was promoted to CMO from her previous role as head of media and performance marketing. Previously, she was the SVP of digital and e-commerce at Jackson Hewitt, and before that, she ran digital acquisition and measurement at MetLife, and was with Motorola as global analytics and CRM director, as well as running e-commerce marketing. Earlier in her career, Melissa held a number of data-driven marketing roles at Jaguar Land Rover. So basically, she's got a great blend of brand side experience, and it will be great to get her perspective on omnichannel advertising. But first, I want to turn it over for a little quick commercial break.
My name is Aaron Goldman, and you may know me as the CMO at Mediaocean, but I'm also an ad tech influencer. So step aside, Ari Papero. If you work in advertising, you probably use Mediaocean. If you're attending this event, you almost certainly do. So why not dress the part? For a limited time only, you can get a free, yes, that's free, Mediaocean t-shirt sporting our new logo. Just go to Mediaocean.com/shirt to get yours shipped to you free of charge. Yes, that's free of charge. Supplies are limited, so act now. Mediaocean.com/shirt. Sorry, kid sizes not available.
All right, Lance Newhouser here, president of Mediaocean, and I am joined by Melissa Grady, CMO of Cadillac. Melissa, it is thrilling to get a chance to talk to you today. I happen to be dialing in from one of our shared favorite places in the Chicagoland area, but where are you joining us from today?
I am in Manhattan today. We live mainly in New York, and so that is where I am today.
So let's start with some a little bit of softballs. Let's ease into the conversation just a little bit. Tell me how the last year has been. How have you been? How have you been dealing with some of the challenges? And perhaps most importantly, what's something positive that you've learned from the last year?
I don't think this past year has been a softball for anyone, really. But I think
not the year, just the questions. Yes.
No, I have to say, but it has obviously been a really tough year and a really big growing year for all of us, personally, professionally, as we've tried to work through all of this, as a country and as the world, just the things we've gone through. But I think what's been really fascinating to me is, as we take a step back, is how much we've learned about ourselves, about human nature, how we all come together in these moments. When I think, you know, if you think about the first couple weeks, and right now we're exactly at that year point when everything shut down in the US, and all of the, we're in this together. I have memories of in Italy, them singing out of windows and watching that, and all those human moments. And I think really taking stock of what's important. What does work-life balance or work-life integration mean? I think one of the things that's been really fun this year is fitness at home, and how we learn to do that at home. So obviously just a really big, crazy year. But I think we've learned a lot about ourselves and each other, which has been really positive.
Do you have a favorite fitness at home device or approach or app, or what are you using here?
So I have a SoulCycle bike that I absolutely love. And I also do a lot of Peloton workouts. So the Peloton strength workouts are really fun, and I really love them. So, and then yoga with Adrian. So that's kind of my little trifecta right there.
You definitely have jumped into the future of fitness. Perhaps we can make as good of a transition as I can talking about the future. Perhaps you can help shed some light on what you think the future of advertising, and specifically omni-channel advertising, looks like. What does it mean to you and to your marketing organization? Tell me a little bit about your omni-channel journey.
Yeah. So when we look at omni-channel, I think what it really is it's the old adage, being at the right place at the right time with the right person, right? Like that's really what omni-channel is about. As we look at it, we really do it with a customer first focus. So where do people want to be interacting? Where are they? Especially as we talk about this past year and how behaviors are changing. Omnichannel has expanded for us into things like gaming, into things like, you know, we've done some things with 60-second docs and some interesting things with music. So it's really about understanding exactly where people are and when and how they want to hear from you as a brand, and then us trying to show up there and having the right insights, having the right technology, and having the right content, so that we can be there and show up differently and break through.
So Joanna from Forrester has been talking about the crawl, walk, run stages of moving into omni-channel, and how she just explained that it's obviously multifaceted. So I guess a two-part question. Where do you think you are along the journey? Are you crawling? Are you walking? Are you running yet? And then what are some of your key focus areas going forward?
Yeah, so I love the crawl, walk, run framework to kind of assess where you are. And someone on my team said that it's more like a fart-like run. So that is, if you're not familiar with it, when it's almost like interval training in a run. So you run really fast, and then you run slower, and then you run really fast. And this actually really helps you build up your performance really well. And I think as we look at running, because in a lot of ways, I think in a lot of ways, we're still in the crawl and walk, and in a lot of ways, we're in the run. But as we look at how we're running, we really try to sprint ahead, try new and innovative things, be at the forefront, but then we slow down and jog a little bit. We measure that working, and then we start sprinting again. And we're gonna, you know, we kind of have this test, learn, then we're gonna optimize, and then we're gonna run right back into testing and learning.
So if we can get a little specific for a second, just to hit on those key focus areas a little bit more. You talked about the right time, the right place, right message. I'm paraphrasing slightly, but you also mentioned the sprints. Is there an area right now where you feel you are sprinting? And if so, what is it? And are there other areas where you feel like you really do need to take that kind of breather collect yourself before you run again. By the way, I love that this whole thing became a fitness analogy all the way through. But yeah, those are the two questions I have for you for now.
Yeah. So I think the area where, as Cadillac, we're really blazing trails and leading the way is when you look at leaning into addressable connected TV audience first. So Cadillac, for even pre-pandemic, has defined who our audience is, and we've flipped the funnel, and we've flipped how we're doing targeting. So if you think about the old way of targeting, you would go out with linear, try to hit your reach and frequency, get as much as you can, and then go down through the funnel to digital and get into more of the, lower funnel, programmatic, really performance type metric things. What we do is we take that audience first and we understand where they are across the funnel. So we'll take the lower funnel, and we know that's a machine that just needs to be working because people are coming into market for vehicles all the time. But as we go up the funnel, we're looking at, from a TV perspective, through connected addressable TV platforms, how do we find that audience? And then how do we use linear TV more to be bigger branding, tentpole moments? We were just recently in the Super Bowl, and that gives us a moment to really tell a story. But then as people move through, we're really trying to redefine reach and frequency. So instead of saying we're hitting 80% of the people 2 times, what I want to look at is, what is my optimal frequency? And if that's 5, who are the people that I've reached 5 times? And then they're good. They don't want to hear from me anymore, and I don't need to be bothering them anymore. Who are the people that I've only reached 4 or 3 times? And where can I get that incremental reach to get that frequency there? And who have I not yet talked to that's in this audience that I want to talk to? And where do I then go to continue to get that reach? So the way that we're looking at it, I think we're running, and we've done, when we talk about the fart leg, we've sprinted into that. We've done some testing. We hold out control groups on some of the connected TV that we do, so that we can understand what the real impact is, not only of just the audience, but the creative. As I look at how do we redefine reach and frequency, how do we measure across all these platforms, that's where we, along with everyone else, are really crawling, because this cross-platform measurement is difficult today. I think if we were to say that it's even possible, but it's difficult today. As we start looking into cookie deprecation, that's going to become more difficult. And so, as we look to the future, that's going to be a really interesting shift from how we're going to be able to see how effective we are across everything.
Yeah, I think that's a really astute and well said point. The world is certainly changing around us. I think the need for better math and science and not cookies to really understand the audience, so that it can be broken down exactly like you just said, which is start with the audience, understand how often you have connected with them or not, and figure out what you need to say to them again in order to continue to move them forward. But I think we all know that not all touch points are equal, especially when you realize not all brands are equal. And you happen to be representing a brand that is not as equal as all others. I would go so far as to say, on many levels, much stronger than a lot of brands that are out there, and that's a credit to you and your organization. So help us understand a little bit more in terms of what the future holds for Cadillac as a brand, and if you can wind in there a little bit about the hot topic of electric vehicles, that'd be exciting for everyone to hear.
Well, you can't talk about the future of Cadillac without talking about the future of electric vehicles. So I think, GM itself has made a commitment to an all EV future, and we have our vision of 0, 0, 0. As we look at Cadillac and where Cadillac fits into that, Cadillac is going to be the first all EV brand within General Motors. In fact, we will be all EV by the end of the decade. So as we look at 0 crashes, 0 emissions, 0 congestion, Cadillac's really going to try to be leading the charge for that for GM. So we've got the Lyriq coming next year. If you haven't seen our Super Bowl spot, please go on YouTube. Look at the Lyriq. It's pretty amazing. We have Edgar Scissorhands, who is driving that vehicle with Winona Ryder, his mother. and it's pretty incredible. And I think the other thing that that spot shows, or if you watch our Escalade spot, or even I'll just keep going, we have some new content out, which is called Time to Let Go. But all of this, what all of this is showcasing is something that's pretty incredible technology, and that's Super Cruise. And Super Cruise is the first hands-free driving experience. And I'm taking my hands off the fake little wheel that's in front of me, but Super Cruise is pretty amazing. It is technology where the car stays in the lane. We now have lane changing. If you hit the turn signal, you'll change lanes, and it's absolutely amazing. There is this moment, and this is what Time to Let Go is all about. There's this moment the first time you take your hands off the wheel that is absolutely exhilarating, a little bit frightening for a moment until you see the vehicle taking care of you and itself. So I think as we really look towards the future, it's all about amazing leading technology and innovation, an all EV future, and really unbelievable design. And I know I may be biased, but when I look at the Lyriq, it is one of the most beautiful cars I've ever seen. I've never wanted a car as bad as I want that car.
Forget calling it a bias. How about calling it passion? We might be hundreds of miles away and we might be over a screen right now, but your passion is palpable, and I can feel how excited you are around the future of Cadillac. I know that Deborah Wall, the GM CMO, has made some big commitments as part of everybody in. You clearly seem in. So how do you see that playing out? And then I want you to pontificate for us a little bit around where you see the world in 5 years, and maybe you can even bridge a gap for us between how you see the world for Cadillac as a brand and how you see the world for omnichannel communications coming together.
Okay, I can talk about all those. So the first thing, I think when we look at GM, everybody in, it's really about GM going all EV, as I was talking about, and our mission that we have. As we look at that, I think the biggest things are, consumer education and EV adoption. And a lot of the barriers to EV adoption are battery life, which our Ultium technology, we're going to have 300 miles of range on these. So that's a huge thing. Understanding charging. And I think anyone who's thought about driving an electric vehicle, myself included, in the past, you worry about, am I going to run out of battery? And what does that look like? And what does that mean? But really, because especially moving forward, we have so much range, you're not going to need to worry about it as much. You're going to go home, you're going to plug in your car. It almost becomes like plugging in your phone at the end of the day. And then you wake up in the morning and you have 300 miles of range. Now, when you're going longer, you're just going to plan out your journey, and we'll have a lot of tools to help you for along the way where you're going to need to go. The vehicles, the apps will help you along that. So all of these things that have made having an electric vehicle a little bit more challenging are really going to be addressed. So I think when we look at everybody in, that's what we're really, that's where we really see the big shift and change coming as we go to this all electric future that we're really excited about. When I think about where the world will be in 5 years, and I think I'll start with personal, then go to vehicle, and then I'll go to what we were talking about. I think the first thing is I really hope that we've learned a lot of lessons from COVID, and we've changed a lot of things. And as I look at 5 years in the future, I'm really hoping that we've taken a lot of these things. We have this work-life integration. We feel like we are prioritizing the right things in life. One of the right things that I hope we're prioritizing will be going to an all-electric future. And I think when you look at 5 years, EV adoption is going to be so much better than it is today. And I think that the barriers to EV are really going to be broken down. As we look at technology and this cookieless world, what I hope is that it's actually going to lead us to a lot more consumer understanding and consumer consent, which is going to lead to a better ecosystem and a better experience for everyone. For us as marketers, and understanding who we're talking to and that they want to speak to us, and for consumers who are going to start to say, this is when and how I want to interact with you and what that'll look like.
I love that, and I I hate that we have to wrap up because I am absolutely enjoying talking to you, but I love that you are leaving us on a message of hope. I think everyone listening in here today obviously will be able to take away a few things. One, that you are passionate about the brand that you represent, and I think we all need a little bit more of that in our lives. And whenever we get a chance to experience that, it makes us feel better about the work that we're doing, even if it might be different work. And then I also think everyone's going to be able to take away the fact that large brands like yourself are leaning in to help change the industry and help communicate in a way that consumers are behaving. And they are at all touch points. They are looking for education, like you said, on subjects that they care about. And the fact that you guys are certainly everybody all in on making both of these a reality is exactly why we wanted to talk to you today. So cannot thank you enough for making time to be here with us. We truly appreciate you and everything that you're doing.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks a lot, Melissa and Lance. Great to hear what a large marketer like Cadillac is seeing and what they are finding as far as the challenges and opportunities that marketers are facing. So we also asked another survey question of all of you, and this is one of my favorites. I always love the greatest challenges, those kind of questions. So we asked the greatest barriers that you all were facing when it comes to omnichannel advertising, and I'm sure this will hit home for many of you. You know, I think the fact that there are isolated metrics, you know, a lot of people go to messaging and the challenges of having consistent messaging, but generally, most of the barriers and challenges to advance digital marketing come down to metrics, because you know, without the right metrics, you're not going to have a good gauge on whether or not what you're doing is working. And also siloed teams, you know, no matter what, this is an internal challenge. So, I mean, a lot of times the focus goes to the external manifestation, but that comes from the internal. And the fact is, a lot of marketing organizations traditionally have not been set up to do omnichannel advertising. It's been very siloed, and I think changing that is going to be a big challenge. And then also maybe a little bit less so was the isolated view of the customer, and then siloed budgets, which is a reality, but it's easier to fix, I would say, than the isolated metrics and the siloed teams. So thank you all for weighing in there. I think that was very illuminating. And next up, we're going to hear from some top Mediaocean executives about how Mediaocean itself is tackling the omnichannel challenge. And I want to kick it over right now to Mona Kaldi.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mona Kaldi, Vice President of Corporate Marketing and Communications at Mediaocean.
Hi, guys. I'm Katie Detman, Vice President of Product Marketing.
Hey, everyone. I'm Anupam Gupta, Chief Product Officer at Mediaocean.
So, as you may have seen, we put out some really exciting news yesterday around our new product paradigm and the transformation of the Mediaocean platform. We wanted to take a moment to take you through what's really driving this transformation, what changes we've already made, and what you can expect in the future. So, we open to this familiar living room scene that really embodies the modern media world that we're living in. The way consumers consume, even work, learn, attend parties, even virtual events, it's always on across all screens and speakers. We've seen this accelerate over the last year. In 2020, nearly 14 hours per day was spent with media. More than half of that was with digital, and the biggest increase year over year was connected TV, up 34% to 1 hour and 17 minutes. Some of this was pandemic related, but digital streaming shifts, they're permanent. From the consumer perspective, it's never been easier to get the content you want, when and where you want it. And the technology and infrastructure is finally in place to enable the seamless consumption. But it's a different story for marketers. As Brian showed us the results from the pre-event survey, Many are still in that crawl phase, and the last survey question shows why this might be the case. We still have siloed teams, siloed budgets, isolated metrics, an isolated view of the customer. With everything in silos, how can we get to omnichannel? Well, as Joanna said, one way to start is just by connecting a few channels and working your way up to omnichannel. However, when you consider all the disruptors like media fragmentation, privacy regulation, cookie deprecation, closed ecosystems, how can we bridge that gap and evolve? We're at a critical juncture as an industry and a moment in time where it feels like the entire global 600 billion advertising market is on the cusp of tremendous change. It feels like a new wave is coming. And it's not just media that's being disrupted. Commerce has now become omni-channel as we order food, sporting goods, even toilet paper online. This is where Mediaocean comes in. As the company that's really been the foundation of our industry for the past 50 years, we're ready to lead that transformation that's needed for the next 50. Our vision is to power a world where marketers market the way consumers consume. We're building the tools required to facilitate really seamless orchestration of consumer experiences with brands. From the giant screens outside to the big screens in living rooms, to the small screens in the palm of our hands and even on our wrists, with our platform, the entire process can be managed effectively and transparently from a command center. We're connecting the entire supply chain through automation and intelligent tools that bridge advertisers, agencies, media, data, and technology together. At some point in the future, we might not even think of media channels and ad placements in the same way, certainly not as we know them today. Advertising will be executed with such precision and imagination that it won't feel like advertising. It'll be truly integrated across multiple different surfaces, maybe even across refrigerators, cars, and even physical spaces. Whether it's helping ride the wave of a futuristic media world or navigating today's current landscape, Mediaocean is serving your needs and paving the way for the future. We're building the mission-critical platform for omni-channel advertising. Today, that happens in media like TV, print, and digital, but a new wave is coming. Whatever changes occur on whatever screen or experience, or whatever the next big thing is, these are all channels, and we're omni-channel. As the global economy twists and turns, we're expanding our footprint to power the entire global market. We're now up to over 1,200 employees globally across 20 offices, supporting over 100,000 users, running campaigns in 90 countries. Whatever shape the world continues to take, Mediaocean is going to provide the solutions needed for advertising to really thrive. With all the momentum we've built in market for the past 50 years, we're excited to announce what's to come. We're carving towards a more connected and technologically advanced future. Indeed, a new wave is coming. So say hello to the new Mediaocean, and it's so much more than a logo. It's a vision for the future and a promise to our customers. Although I gotta say, and I know I have a marketing bias, but I do love our new logo. I'm gonna hand it over to Katie and Anupam, who are going to take you through this new product paradigm, which is both an expression of the transformation that we've already made and a pathway for what's to come in the future.
Thanks, Mona. All right, so striving for that omnichannel excellence, really aiming to market the way that consumers consume, all amidst the kind of growing scale and complexity of today's media ecosystem, is actually pretty complicated. With stakeholders like brands, various agencies, technology and data partners spanning media platforms, publishers, broadcasters, across the growing abundance of devices and screens used by today's consumers, all needing to work seamlessly across the stages of our media lifecycle and workflow, you're left with something that feels a little more chaotic, a little more like this, which is painful to work through. leaves us all with a disjointed process that makes us inefficient, unnecessary expenses and costs that inflate investment, and not to mention financial risk and loss of accountability when there's billions of dollars spread across this frantic mess, ultimately resulting in suboptimal ROI and probably most frustrating, a lack of transparency and control. We've experienced this industry's complexity and scale firsthand at Mediaocean. Over the past 50+ years, we've continually had to solve for the issues inherent in an increasingly complex media ecosystem. To do so, we've brought various products to market over the years, products purpose-built to address the needs of each of the stakeholders that we see and changes in workflow as the media has evolved. This includes Lumina for planning, Spectra and Prisma for traditional and digital buying, Scope for closed ecosystems, Ignitia for cross-media finance, Aura for time and cost management, and our Connect integration APIs. While this has helped us solve an array of pain points for a variety of stakeholders, we know that the omnichannel imperative requires that we take it to the next level. So to truly bring intelligence and seamless orchestration to this industry, especially as the ecosystem continues to fragment and grow in complexity, we know that we really need to transform Mediaocean from within to create a new product paradigm and unified platform that is essential for the future. So I keep saying paradigm. What is the new Mediaocean paradigm? It is our platform and our value proposition re-architected into a mission-critical set of capabilities for omnichannel advertising with solutions for media intelligence, media management, and media finance. It's connected to the broader ecosystem through APIs and integrations that enable bidirectional data and encapsulated all by our omnichannel data warehouse, normalizing a multitude of data through a standard taxonomy in a way that makes your advertising data more actionable. By doing this, we're taking each of the issues caused by our complex ecosystem and creating distinct advantages for various stakeholders. With our platform, your processes can be unified and efficient. You'll eliminate a lot of those unnecessary costs and expenses. You'll gain total transparency and the ability to extract intelligence. And you ultimately reduce that financial control or reduce those risks to financial control and accountability and ultimately optimize that ROI. So why Mediaocean? Why are we the company to deliver on this vision? First and foremost, we're an independent platform. We don't own media. We operate neutrally in market and have, over the past 50+ years, which is particularly important at a time when more data and technology is consolidating within closed ecosystems. Our open approach ensures that all stakeholders in the industry can participate and thrive. Second is our scaled ecosystem. So over the years, we've established Mediaocean as the foundational platform for the advertising industry, closing that loop from planning to buying to payment, also playing a role as the connective tissue through APIs and integrations across hundreds of supply data and technology partners globally, including ad servers, DSPs, measurement providers, a variety of media companies with ad inventory. We're not just programmatic, not just digital, not just traditional, and we're not really limited to any one channel. We're really interoperable across the board. Now, while data science maybe wasn't a sort of word you associated with Mediaocean historically, it's time to start associating it now. Our customers centralize a wealth of really important and critical advertising data in our platform, and we want our customers to get more value out of that data. So we're doubling down on our investment and prioritization of intelligence-focused solutions and capabilities to help our customers not just process, but really optimize the $150 billion in ad spend that's running through our system. So Anupam will share a little bit more with you guys on this. Finally, we have a massive footprint across the world with our platform being used in 90 countries, service teams in every region. Our dedicated knowledge, training, and client success teams work with our product teams to develop an always expanding vast library of resources to help our hands-on users. Last I checked, I think we were up to like 6,000 quick reference guides, over 800 e-learning modules. So we're able to make sure that our customers are fully adopting our platform and getting the most out of our software. And there's one other key differentiator for Mediaocean. As we continue to see changes in consumer data and privacy that affect the way that marketers can target and measure success of audiences and campaigns, a lot of the changes that Joanna called out earlier really make it apparent that measurement focused on identity is not going to be a singularly reliable data set to complete that picture. Over the past 50 years, we've seen this sort of seesaw, teeter-totter back and forth between content and contextual signals for targeting measurement, all the way down to an addressable and an individual level. Within that, you have deterministic methods for resolving audience IDs and probabilistic models for scaling those audiences. But now the pendulum, we're kind of seeing swing back the other way as we lose the granular signals, move towards cohorts as kind of Google has recently announced, and more traditional content and contextual approaches. So as Joanna said, it's going to be a hodgepodge of solutions across the spectrum. But as an independent and intelligent platform, our ability to help our customers unlock media intelligence doesn't depend on whether cookies, IDFAs, or any other ID lives or dies. Our graph and approach to measurement leverages a diverse and always evolving set of data and identity. Unlike DSPs that were built on cookies for programmatic or other ad tech point solutions, our roots go so much deeper and our surface area is so much wider. By acting as that kind of neutral facilitator of data between brands, agencies, inventory suppliers, measurement systems, we ensure that performance is maximized while also respecting consumer privacy. So now I'm going to turn it over to Anupam to take us one level deeper on the product paradigm.
Hey everyone, so I'm very excited to be sharing how our customers will benefit from the new Mediaocean. As has been mentioned, this approach takes everything that we've built over the last 50 years and puts that into a paradigm, a construct to deliver value over the next 50. Everything we are doing is with an omni-channel world in mind because of everything that's been mentioned. And so there are three solution areas that we think about. Right, with media intelligence, it's all about insights for strategic planning and spend optimization. Right, with media management, it's an end-to-end workflow for omnichannel campaigns. And with media finance, it's the controls and visibility to run the business, all the back office stuff that is necessary to run the business. So let's go a level deeper through each of these solution areas one at a time. Okay, starting with media intelligence. So we have the Global Plans product today, which many of you know as Lumina. This is all about improving collaboration between advertisers and agencies as plans are being developed, as the spend allocation is happening. Then you've got strategic audiences. These are the capabilities that we built in 4C's Scope platform, and this allows you to create audiences from different data sets and use them across different channels, right? A key part of this is the work that we can do to essentially interoperate and leverage first-party data, which is super important in the world going forward. Because as Joanna put it, you can think through the relationship that you want to drive with your customers and align your brand accordingly. The next solution area is really around business outcomes measurement, which leverages our BYOD or bring your own data capabilities to anchor on the source of truth measurement that matters to a particular marketer. And we know that source of truth measurement, the KPIs that matter to each marketer are different. So we want to make sure we can bring that data into the platform and connect it across different channels as campaigns are being executed and optimized. Then there's supply chain insights, which provides transparency into the costs, invoices, payments, cash flow, essentially a look at the media supply chain. And finally, there is unified performance insights to aggregate media performance and measurement data across channels, across regions, across campaigns. And I'll talk more about how we're going about doing that a little bit down the road. So let's go into the next solution area, which is all about media management. So like I said, right, this is the end-to-end workflow for managing omni-channel campaigns. So today we have the buyer workflow, which takes what we've built in Prisma and has been rapidly iterating already towards omni-channel. Right, and it's a standardized workflow, to do that. And then the next part of that, it connects to the seller workflow. And this is really important because the buy-sell connection, right, drives the automation and efficiency, which adds value, to all aspects of the ecosystem here. So then there is closed ecosystem optimization, which was again, a core part of 4C and the Scope platform. We've continued to build that out to bring in inventory across social, video, e-commerce, and more. And this means, integrations with Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Snap, Twitter, Amazon, and more to come. And lastly, there is converged TV optimization, which is all about a data-driven approach to planning and measurement in the world of converged TV, which means linear and connected TV together. There are powerful use cases that this unlocks because you start out with the strategic audiences that I already talked about, but then can do things like unified planning, unified measurement, reach extension, all those different powerful use cases that our customers are already using because this capability is under the hood of platforms like the NBCU One platform and Disney Plus Hotstar. So the work we are doing now is effectively bringing an omni-channel workflow, as I've just mentioned, right, with this kind of intelligence so that all that can happen in a cohesive manner to add value to our clients. Let's go into the next solution area, which is around media finance. So this is the core system of record that helps our customers run their business. So here we've got estimates and costs. This is the product formerly known as Aura. And this is used by media and creative agencies to manage all their pre-billing activity. Then there's billing and payments, which improves speed and reliability from client billing to vendor payments. Then there is financial management. This is what began as Spectra and has moved into Ignitia as we've developed and deployed cloud-based solutions. And this provides the controls by channel and by region with full customization and flexibility. This has already been deployed in different regions and is being expanded to others. Then you've got financial reporting, which is the surfacing of profitability and spend analysis to help make better data-driven decisions. So speaking of data, right, all three of these solution areas are powered by an omni-channel data warehouse. When we think about delivering value in a unified platform for the omni-channel world, it's more than just bringing all these modules together, in one place. It's more than standardizing workflow, right, between the different components that I've talked about. If you really want to unlock better performance, then we've got to tap into the data in context at the right time where users can benefit from that data. So how do we do that, right? It all starts with a consistent data foundation. So that essentially means that we unify the data from disparate sources, all the way from plan to pay. If you look at that whole cycle, planning data, buying data, measurement platforms, right? The financial data, right? We bring all that together at the appropriate level of granularity. Now, the important thing here is to normalize all that data against a taxonomy that makes it possible to compare performance and business metrics across platforms, across channels, media types, data sources, and regions, right? So normalizing that taxonomy, for the data that has been brought together in one place is absolutely critical. So with millions of data points rationalized to effectively speak the same language, now we can apply data science to synthesize and analyze this data across, again, channels, categories, views, etc. And that turns into actionable insights. And this is the core philosophy that we have in our products, right? Which is not only organize the data and surface the insights, but make them actionable. That means surfacing the right intelligent insights at the key moments of decision making so that it adds value to clients without going through hoops. So So with that, this is how our services now look for our customers. As you can see, we've made everything very simple. We've moved away from lots of products and abstract language to straightforward nomenclature. We are rapidly iterating on top of this new paradigm to bring everything together and make sure that our customers are getting the full value from our platform. So thank you so much for tuning into our session. Special thanks to all our customers and partners, and on behalf of the entire Mediaocean team, we look forward to transforming the future together. Thank you.
Thanks, Anupam, Katie, and Mona for that exciting look at the Mediaocean platform and how it has evolved. Now we're going to conclude with a fireside chat. It's going to take place between Mediaocean CEO Bill Wise and Ed Norton. Now, I know you probably know Ed from his film career. Most of us do. That's because he has starred in, produced, written, or directed over 30 films, including one of my favorites, American History X. I think I watched that 4 or 5 times. He has been nominated for 3 Academy Awards and has won the Golden Globe, an Emmy, an Obie, and numerous others. But a lot of people do not know that Ed has a parallel career, and it is as an investor and an operator of technology ventures. As an investor, he has a portfolio that would make any VC jealous. It includes Uber, Tala, League, and Ego Mobile. As an operator, he's founded multiple companies, including a company called EDO, which applies advanced data science and machine learning to the development of innovative audience engagement signals for media and advertising. The company's data and software is now one of the most pervasively used and highly valued tools across the convergent TV ecosystem. EDO is becoming a must-have insight tool in every corner of our industry. One note, this conversation was originally going to include Robert Smith, the chairman, founder, and CEO of Vista Equity Partners. Unfortunately, Robert couldn't join us for the conversation, but he does send his regards for the Mediaocean community.
Hello, and congratulations to the team at Mediaocean on an exciting launch, and wishing everyone in the Mediaocean community all the very best. I'd like to share a few quick thoughts on the current state of play with media and technology. The pandemic may have tested the durability of enterprise software, but ultimately proved out Vista's investment thesis, that enterprise software is mission critical to business continuity and is also critical to business success. We've experienced Vista's most active investment period in terms of both the volume of capital we've deployed and the returns to our investors in the last 18 months. While the fourth industrial revolution, or digital revolution, was well underway entering to 2020, the dynamics of the global pandemic create an accelerant for digitization unlike any other. For example, before the pandemic, many executives viewed technology primarily as a source of savings. Now they see it as a competitive advantage or are aligning their entire businesses around digital technologies and infrastructure. We've seen this demand for digital solutions across Vista's portfolio of companies, which span nearly every market sector. We're also seeing a lot of advancements in the area of artificial intelligence and machine learning. Established organizations who either grew up in the dot-com era or leaned heavily into the data warehousing craze of the 80s and 90s have built advantages, leveraging data-hungry algorithms to create machine learning capabilities. They're getting smarter, better, and faster every day. Additional advantages can be gained from unstructured data assets. Think text, video, and images, while algorithmic advances allow the means to create compelling computer vision and natural language processing capabilities, leveraging the information that is readily available across large swaths of the internet. This becomes a self-fulfilling cycle. More data leads to better machine learning capabilities. Better capabilities lead to the research into algorithmic advances that advance and require more data, which reinforces the advantage already inherent in data-rich platforms. This is the power of internet-scale companies. Facebook, Google, Amazon, etc., have access to some of the largest data sets in the world that we've ever seen, allowing them to continue to push the envelope. And this is why companies like Mediaocean are so important, playing the role of intermediary in the ecosystem, and offering a mission-critical omnichannel advertising platform. So thank you to the Mediaocean community for allowing me to share a few thoughts today and wishing everyone the very best.
And now I'm going to give it over to the conversation between Bill and Ed. But first, we have a quick commercial.
Hi, it's Aaron Goldman again. Don't you hate when you see the same ad over and over, especially during the same show? Don't worry, Mediaocean can help. We offer converged TV optimization as part of our media management solution, so you can extend your reach from linear to streaming and unify your audiences to control reach and frequency and sequence messaging accordingly. Oh, did I mention we also have shirts? Go to Mediaocean.com/shirt to get yours today. That's Mediaocean.com/shirt. Now, back to the show. Sorry, kid sizes still not available.
Hello and welcome. This has been a great day for Mediaocean, the ecosystem, our clients, partners. Couldn't be more excited about the new product paradigm and bringing the best solutions to the market. We're going to round this up with a special session here. Edward, thank you so much for coming. I think a lot of people are wondering why a 3-time Academy Award nominee is sitting here talking about technology and data and advertising. I don't think they'll be talking about that after they hear you, spin some language here. But Edward,
once I get my guitar out, and finish up with some Sheryl Crow, like it's going to be like the ultimate corporate celebrity appearance.
Listen, I think I talk on behalf of everyone. If you do that, I would, it'd be epic. So Edward, 5 years ago, we met through some friends and some colleagues, and you had told me that you kind of spend 10% of your time on acting, but really like 2% of your brain power, kind of watching your journey and living through it. I think that's probably down to like 5% of your time, maybe less than 1% of your brain power. But, why don't you start just by telling us how you got involved with Ken Show and EDO and it seems like you have a passion for this and would love to kind of dig into it.
Sure. I mean, it's a long and twisting path. When I got out of college, I worked for an organization that my grandfather built that was doing affordable housing development through really innovative use of the low-income housing tax credit, which he was a pioneering author of. And basically, not to get really wonky, but back in the day, there was the Community Reinvestment Act demanded that banks, invest equity in social transformation projects and stuff. And they looked at it as philanthropy. And my granddad came along and really helped create an impact financial product, the low-income housing tax credit, that created a really innovative mechanism for actually getting great returns out of investment in affordable housing. And that sounds like a weird thing to reference, but that's what I was doing. I was doing that in New York and moonlighting in the theater. Nobody should assume they're going to be successful as an actor. Let's just be super clear about that. There are like 10 really great actors for every actor that you know about, and I always had a lot of different interests, and in that era, even though this is a little bit of an analog example, it really struck me a lot was going on even in the early 90s with innovation in financial data platforms, and there was a lot that I was looking at as a function of the worlds I was working in this kind of esoteric corner of housing finance. And one of my roommates was at Goldman and was going on into the private equity side of Goldman. The other of my roommates, Sam Britton, now runs Tech Media Telecom for Goldman. And I was in the mix with a lot of people who were interested in the ways that technology and finance markets were interacting with each other. And even though my life my creative life, took a happy turn and became a big part of my artistic life, I retained that interest. Quietly I invested in lots of companies people have heard of and lots of companies people haven't heard of, and tracked these things. And in those circles, in my circles of my friends who were in finance and in technology, I just met lots of interesting people. And years ago, I met Daniel Nadler, who was the founder of Kensho Technologies, and he and I bonded over a lot of things. We love of Japanese poetry and and all kinds of crazy stuff. And
exactly when people say Edward Norton, I think Japanese poetry.
Basho, what else, right? And anyway, Daniel was literally, he had just incubated Kensho out of the kitchen of like the General Catalyst firm in Boston. And I was walking on the beach with him, and he was describing the way he thought that quant analytics could be democratized and really drive efficiency in the capital markets, and how predictive it could be of things that people used sort of sleepy methodologies to try to predict. And what Daniel did with building a knowledge engine, a plain language query knowledge engine at Kensho, and then obviously just with the really powerful stuff they were doing in predictive analytics for financial markets, it really resonated. A lot of it resonated with me, and I was an early backer of that company. And Daniel and I became really good friends. And he had a great outcome, merging that company into S&P. But along the way, we talked a lot about a particular dimension of what Daniel was doing at Kensho, which was really demonstrating the incredible power of open source data sets like search to be highly correlative with financial outcomes, way more than social sentiment, way more than these kind of, I don't want to say weak, but methodologies that were sort of like indicative but not really predictive in a finance grade sense. And I said to him, I said, listen, I have this whole life over in the media and entertainment industry, and I'm an artist, but the way that marketing's done in our industry, the way that it affects artists, because of course, if Fox Searchlight sort of has to spend indiscriminately and without a sharp sense of efficacy on the Grand Budapest Hotel, Wes Anderson actually makes less money. And that's actually true. Like people say, oh, why are you involved in this? Well, the truth is that inefficient pricing in advertising literally does affect artists, because we often work in net profit participation modalities. And so we want we want marketing to be effective, because we're participants in the outcome of that, right? And so as strange as it may see, as much dissonance me talking about these things, the truth is I actually always felt that a lot of the revolution in really high grade machine learning and AI powered data science actually had not migrated over into the media advertising space to the degree that I was seeing through Kensho in the finance space, in the intelligence community and stuff like that. Yep. And I argued to Daniel that there was an applicability of some of the things that he was very specifically a global pioneer in doing. And we decided to start this company, EDO, to start to bring some of these really, really high grade data science methodologies to problems that we were seeing in the incapacity of the legacy data companies in the space to tell people what they need to know in real time about the efficacy of what they're doing, not just sort of the exposure or the sentiment around it, but actually the degree to which their actions are actually driving to the balance sheet the outcomes that they want, and to be able to see it in real time, yep. To be able to and so we built EDO, and all that is to say simply being an actor and a filmmaker is a funny thing. It's a career, but at the same time, for me, I've never wanted to approach that in a careerist sense. I think doing things back to back to back is it's not just that it's exhausting. I think it actually sort of dilutes my sense of deep artistic engagement in things to treat it like a job. And the result is I have a lot of space. I have a lot of brain space. I have a lot of time, and I'm lucky in the sense that it allows me to parallel track other things that I'm interested in. And I think that and so my, I started a company called CrowdRise that ultimately a crowdfunding platform for charitable organizations that we merged into GoFundMe, which I'm still on the board of. And great, an amazing company, a great organization doing great things. And
well, particularly through the pandemic, I mean, it's just incredible.
And this, though it may seem a strangely esoteric sort of field of data science and advertising and audience measurement, the truth is, for me, there is a real integration between it on an intellectual and business enterprise side of my brain with my artistic life, because I really, really do see technology can disrupt the modalities by which artists are presenting. We've certainly seen that intensively in the last 10 years. The whole, let's call it the arena in which we deliver our work, has been radically changed, right?
Yeah.
Radically changed. And in many cases, things that'll happen will have an initial, that you could argue, negative impact. Let's say, the movie studios existed from the mid-90s when I got involved in movies into, for at least 10, 15 years. The profit center was in home video. The profit center was in the distribution of DVDs. And that was reflected in the contracts. It was reflected in everything. And lo and behold, those industries, music and movies, did not prove ultimately very adept at defending their profit center, which was the ancillary distribution of the product. And they let Netflix, a company that didn't exist, within 5 years, it had taken 165 billion of market cap. And to say that it came up without, it took that away from those businesses. They lost the most profitable part of their entire business by being asleep at the switch on streaming infrastructure and not building it. Now they're coming back around and recapturing some of it, blah blah. But the point is, for a while, for artists, it had a really big effect because gross participation in contracts ended because there was no profit anymore. Yeah. And so you can, I don't think people talk about this enough. There was a while where the idea of the pennies on the dollar that the studios were now getting for streaming, this was seriously impacting artists. A lot of us make movies that are not huge budget movies. Birdman, we all made it for SAG scale. Everybody made like, what a public school teacher makes. It wasn't like, but in the old days, you could bet on making things, because if they became the best picture, the DVDs, everyone would participate and everyone would do well.
Yeah.
Streaming
so
really,
you didn't need a huge box office. It was the whole aftermarket.
No, and streaming really, really, really has affected the back end participation for artists. And so over time, it went from gross to net, and that means that efficiency of marketing is more important than ever, not just for the studios themselves and not just for their risk appetite for making more challenging movies, which got severely affected, but for the artists themselves. And so to me, as strange as it may seem, there's a real benefit to the community of creators for all the industries, to be able to have matrix-like insight into how what they're trying to sell and message is landing with the audience that they're trying to sell it to. And that's why I'm pretty passionate about it, because it's both intellectually stimulating in its own right, as a challenge, but it's also webbed up with I think a world in which I want to see more opportunity for creators, and which I want to see the people who risk money on content feel that they can take risks on the most interesting kind of material and new voices and stuff like that.
Yeah, so just to kind of peel it back for people. So, Ken Chu, was incredible. I mean, Ken Cho rather. Ken Chu is actually an ed tech company. Ken
Yeah, it is. You're
Cho, which always screws people up. Ken Cho, took, Google Trend data, Twitter data, like basically free publicly available data, and just built, surrounded that with data science and predicted things. Like I remember when I met with you and Daniel, you were like, yeah, we can kind of predict unemployment better than the government. We can also predict iPhone sales better than Wall Street analysts or Salesforce licenses. And which is, the thought of that is incredible, because normally people would have to pay, a ton of money to kind of get access to that data. It was just, there's just so much free data out there. And then the idea was, hey, let's actually take a lot of what those learnings and apply it towards media and advertising, which then EDO was kind of born out of that.
That's right. Yeah.
And you also used the example when we met, just of a certain actor, in a movie, and how do you think about marketing that, and the fact that there are literally people still take people off the street and show them, like, here's an ad to promote a movie, and you were actually using the example of like Leonardo DiCaprio when he created, like, he wasn't doing his like love movies, he was doing that like gory film, and you use that as an example. So talk about like what EDO is doing now, right? How are you transforming not only on the creative side, but measurement, optimization? How do you think about maximizing the value of marketing, both on the TV side and the digital side? Talk to us a little bit about what EDO is doing.
Well, let's a lot. This is an informed audience, so it's worth, but it's still worth stating, I think, some basic stipulations. One is, for all of the Facebook and Google and digital advertising and everything we know has swept over the world, the bottom line is anybody in the game knows that, number one, the largest majority of dollars spent on advertising still goes into television. Yep. And there's a reason for that, because it actually is still the most efficacious, powerful medium for driving actual financial outcomes. And by that, this was Daniel's PhD work at Harvard, and one of the reasons people fly him to Davos to talk at economic forums is that predictive analytics that actually tie to balance sheet outcomes are obviously the most valuable ones, right? Sentiment is great, certain things are great, but if you begin to gain confidence that something is as the best thing you can get to see how the dollar you spent delivered you an ROI on dollar returned, that's obviously what everybody wants more than anything else. The people believe rightly that television is still, pound for pound, has the greatest punching power on delivering those results, and there's a lot of actual data to back that up. So the idea that there was a lot of innovative work done by friends of ours like Jonah Goodhart at Moat and others, like people did some great work in diving into the question of, like, how do we measure digital advertising? Great, it's important, right?
Yep.
Part of the reason that what we saw over in the television space for such a long time was essentially metrics from legacy companies over 70 years old that everybody knew had decomposing value. In other words, we're getting less and less and less relevant and more clearly unable to deliver the powerful, the kinds of insights that make them worthy of being the pricing index, right? Yep. The problem is, as Jonah from Moat said to me and Kevin and Daniel one time, Kevin's our CEO at EDO, he said, like, the bottom line is lining up things like very granular minute-by-minute resolution of search with individuated television ads and properly attributing search spikes to ads that are specific to a certain network at a certain time. This is incredibly hard, like really hard. So the reason some of the most innovative work wasn't going on there is honestly because it was a bridge too far for most of the data science talent teams that were taking it on. Not to brag, but the team that Daniel was able to recruit is really next tier. EDO, I will put a glove down and say that we have the most talented data science team in modern television advertising measurement, analytics, efficacy. And they cracked something really unique, which is they built what is effectively an EKG for television advertising. And we should say one other stipulation, which is that there is value to lots of different observations about how an audience responds to something. But there's two really important truths. One is that very few of them, social sentiment, multi-touch attribution, these things, as an academic fact, they do not line up with purchase intent and economic outcomes very well. Daniel has done reams of academic work, and it's one of the reasons he's flown to economic forums all over the world in terms of the pioneering work he's done on proving that there are certain open source data sets, search in particular, that are massively more powerful in terms of tying together the immediate action that the action taken by an audience after they've received the treatment of an ad, and that search and other certain esoteric things bundled and weighted together with it are one of the highest grade signals of purchase intent that marry up to actual economic outcomes for advertisers and their products. This is a white papered academic fact. The problem is that it's really, really difficult to do what we've done, which is measure the granularity at an incredibly tight resolution of the relevant search metrics that indicate that purchase intent and tie it to a specific ad. But that is what we went at and cracked, because our conviction was that advertising needs to be priced on something other than exposure. Exposure is, nice to know, and someone needs to do it, but it really doesn't tell you anything anymore in the modern world about whether what you did is working. It tells you, in the old days, it told you, am I buying the best audience I can buy? And that was about as good as we could do. That's not as good as we can do now. We can do much better. And I think, what EDO is focused on is measurement of the mid-funnel reaction of how an ad hits its audience in real time. And it's syndicated. So we are a real-time syndicated, meaning it's always on, and you can look historical at what we think is the most important part of the funnel, the mid-funnel, and because it lets our advertising partners, which are among the biggest television ad spenders in the world, literally see in real time not only are they driving the outcomes, but how did X program do versus another? How did this 30-second ad spots creative do versus this? I'd go so far as to say we've obviated the need for market testing, because you can see in real time. You can take cheap packages and test two different versions and see in real time in the marketplace which is doing better, as opposed to in the lab. But most importantly, because we're now marrying that up with AVOD and SVOD capacity as well, what we're really trying to do is bring to kind of the whole convergent TV landscape the capacity to have an almost, I say Neo in the Matrix like capacity to see in real time how well what you've paid for is doing in driving actual dollars back to the balance sheet. And that, is fairly unprecedented. I think that kind of correlation tightness, investment grade correlation of a metric, that is what our conviction is that that's what we need as a new rate card, a new pricing index, is not an exposure index, but an efficacy index, and efficacy as defined by really the proven best in class metrics that signal purchase intent, and that's that's what we're working on.
And so Edward, we just heard from Melissa Grady, who's the CMO of Cadillac, and so so you can have a Cadillac commercial, Or you can have LeBron James talking about the new Hummer on late night television. You know, you can capture both of those and then understand what is the, you know, what is the activity online from, you know, immediately after, right? Kind of minute by minute, but even more second by second, right? And how, you know, because so much now is, and we can see this with our kids, right? It's like watching television, but you're having your, you know, your phone or your tablet or your computer sitting on your lap, and there's just so much interaction. So you can measure that, but then you can also measure kind of the business outcomes from there.
That's right. And it's very important. Like if you think about how many data sets in this world we all work in allow you to actually be responsive during the campaign, there's very few. You know, I mean, anything that's coming to you on the bottom of the funnel, the back end, who cares? It's already over. You know what I mean? It's already over. You can't do anything about it. Like the point is to have a metric of the effectiveness of your ads that comes to you with a speed that allows you to you know, nimbly move during your campaign. That's really important. And I think I think that you know, look, everybody's trying to figure out what's the new basket of tea leaves that they read. Our conviction is that it really shouldn't be tea leaves anymore. You know, it shouldn't be, frankly, very interpretive. There is the mistake is in thinking that, like, you can't have empiric tools in this. You can, like they're hard, but the idea is to get to something that the ecosystem on all sides of the buy and the sell side, and we work with literally almost every major TV network in helping them price their inventory. You want the buy and the sell side completely in alignment, that the metric that they're using is empiric, that they agree on it. They're like, and you know, Kevin, our CEO, was at CNBC in the days when they just elected to go off of Nielsen data to price their programming because they were just sure it wasn't reflective of the power of their programming to their unique audience, right?
Yeah.
And that was a big part of his conviction that we needed to move toward this and this kind of a new world. And I think that that's what everybody's been looking for. And we, you know, we think that we're onto that. Look, the best thing in the world is for the ad sellers, you know, the inventory sellers and the ad buyers and the agencies and you and everybody to agree that, you know, that what we're looking at, this is kind of incontrovertible. You really can look at the same thing and say, hard to argue that is driving that, right? And that's what we think we're delivering. It also really affects, I mean, now we're talking about the real time, because there's two different things. There's the real time component of it, the responsive component of it, but there's also, like, we're heading into upfronts, right? So if you're not using like search engagement rate data, this kind of data on upfront planning, you are way behind the curve, like way behind the curve, because the historical data we've got for any brand, literally, that in all of our best clients are using this to inform their media mix optimization and their upfront planning. And that's from movie studios to Geico to most of the biggest car companies. And I think, you know, the ability to optimize the punching power of your dollars spent, and to know that you're not essentially doing the old spray and pray is really important. That's how people are going to see really improved ROIs. And, you know, in many cases, some companies are lucky. They're not looking for more efficiency of their marketing dollars. They're not looking to get the same with less. They want to get more for what they're spending, right? And we are definitely helping.
Yeah, you know, one of the big reasons for, you know, introducing this new paradigm is the world of for Mediaocean and the market overall is, you know, it used to be, you know, things used to be planned and bought in silos, right? You were able to do planning on one side You'd have your media agency executing on the buys. You'd have marketing procurement teams doing optimization way after the fact. And when you're thinking about upper funnel stuff, those silos worked. And when you're thinking about buying media, in a futures market or an upfront market where you're already committed to an advance, that makes sense. But now the world is you need to plan, buy, and optimize in an iterative process.
That's
and
right.
So Mediaocean looked at this, many years ago and said, we need to get to one vertical stack where not only can you plan, buy, and optimize in an iterative process on one technology stack, but we need to be able to interoperate a lot of different solutions, including, things like EDO, where right now there are, dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of ad tech and data solutions that don't really have a place to go. And what's happening is this kind of spoken hub and things are all over the place, and the business needs an operating system to kind of move it forward. And so, you kind of talk in our language. I have another question for you, which is,
let me just say this. I think the upfront is really interesting because people can talk about it's a great environment. There's gonna be like 40 billion of ads sold in the upfront still, right? So it's like not a small amount. And I think to your exact point of the iterative quality, but the way that would used to be looked at is like you're just buying ratings packages, right? But if you're not doing upfront planning, you're purchasing on upfronts like around outcome-based data.
Yes.
It's like you're literally you're in the Stone Age, and I think and not all outcome-based data or what's asserted to be outcome-based data is the same, right? There's and this is I've sort of half jokingly, half seriously thrown it out on Twitter that we will have that debate on stage with anybody who wants to have it as to what signal of outcome-based data really represents real finance grade outcome-based data. We'll have that academic argument with anyone who wants to have it. But the other thing I think
gauntlet thrown for anyone who's interested.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Bill, Robert, Edward. I thought that was a great conversation that really made clear how omnichannel touches all of us in many different ways. And that is going to wrap up the programming for the day, but just a couple of quick things before we go our separate ways. Tomorrow, you're going to be receiving an email with a couple of important things. One will be a recording of the entire event, so keep an eye out for that. And the other is going to be a link that you can use in order to download a complimentary marketer's guide to omnichannel advertising from the Mediaocean website. This is also going to be in the same email. And just in case you happen to miss those ads that played during the event, don't forget about the free t-shirt offer. And my own plug is don't forget to visit the rebooting and ideally sign up if you like what you see. And that is going to be mostly it for us today. But before we go, I want to go over, I promised you the 5 things I learned, but this is going to be a group project because I want to hear your 5 things as well as my 5 things. So my 5 things are this. One is that omnichannel is here and now, and it is a challenge for all marketers of all sizes. I know at Digiday I was always talking about consistency because even at a small company like Digiday, being consistent across all different channels and touch points was incredibly difficult. But it is what makes omnichannel work. The second thing I learned was that most marketers are still very early on in the journey, and that's okay. As I said, you need self-awareness in order to improve. And the fact that most of you said that you're still at the crawl phase means that you understand that you got work to do. Now, that work, the third thing that I learned, is that work to be truly omnichannel needs to first look internally, because silos are the enemy of omnichannel. And if you fix the silos, you've got a much better chance of having a true omnichannel strategy and a powerful one. The fourth thing is measurement, measurement, measurement. I think measurement is the unsexy challenge to all of these advanced digital marketing techniques, and you need to be able to measure it. Otherwise, you're not going to even know if it's working or how to improve. And then finally, the fifth thing that I learned is that platforms are evolving and will need to continue to evolve in order to help marketers catch up with consumers. It's not as if consumers are going to all of a sudden go back to being very easy to engage with. It's only going to get more complicated. So I want to hear from you about your biggest things that you learned today, and if you could use the hashtag Omnichannel Imperative. That would be great. And I'm going to include a couple in the next issue of the Rebooting newsletter. So that's a further inducement to share your things that you learned. Okay, going to leave it there. I want to thank Mediaocean for hosting this wonderful event. Hope you all found it valuable. Would love to hear any feedback that you have. I know Mediaocean would too. And also get in touch anytime. My email is just bmorrissey@gmail.com. And thank you all for spending this time with us.